As I was praying and I was getting ready for a message, and I'm going to do something a little different. I know I might get in trouble for it, but I'm going to, how heavy is that? It's not heavy, good. I think I'm going to come down here with you guys today, and I think I might still be able to be seen in that camera. I don't know, but we're going to try. But I want to be down here with you guys. Sometimes being up there, I don't know, it's a little different looking kind of down. So I just want to kind of be down here because this morning what I want to talk about, it's as we're getting out of Christmas and we're coming up on the new year and we're getting ready to be into a new year, I begin to think about, as we approach next year, and I begin to think about the anticipation for 2026. What is God going to do in 2026? What did he do in 2025 as we begin to look back at what he'd done and look forward to what he plans to do? I begin to get a little excited because God has a way of making everything better, right? So whatever 2025 was, right, it's past, it's gone. Thank God for everything that he's done, but I can begin to look forward to 2026, and we never know what this year will bring. We never know what tomorrow is going to bring. This could be the year that one of us go home. This could be the year that the Lord returns. This could be the year, and we never know what the year holds. We are not promised tomorrow, and today what I want to talk about is what's really important in our lives. What's really important? And as I begin to think about that, I begin to think about what's important, and I begin to think about life. And in Psalm 39, if you read it there in Psalm 39 in verse 4, David begins to talk about how short life is. He says, life is just a few handbreadths. It's like a breath. It's here and it's gone. Life is not long at all. And I begin to think about what's important to me right now, right? And I begin to think about, I have a bad habit of staying up late, okay? I'm always at home, but I always end up doing something, and before I know it, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. My alarm's set for 6, and I know that alarm is going to go off at 6, right? And I've procrastinated all the way up to this point, and now I've only got 4 hours of sleep, and when that alarm clock goes off in the morning, I, for one, am never ready for it. I have a really bad habit, actually, of snoozing it and going right back to sleep and then waking up, and I've got like 5 minutes to get ready. But I always procrastinate, and then that alarm clock goes off, and it's too late for me to get any more sleep, right? In that moment, that sleep is what's important. Getting at least 6 hours would be nice, but a lot of times I procrastinate, and I don't get that. But that's what's important in the moment, and a lot of times we lose sight of what's important now, and I'm telling you, eventually that alarm clock is going to go off. Jesus is going to either call your name or he's going to come back, and have we been focusing on what's really important? And as I begin to think about what was important, I begin to think about the story of Joseph, right? And not necessarily the story of Joseph, but what the story of Joseph represents. And I began to think about the bones of Joseph, all right? And I know we're going to get into it here in a minute. The bones of Joseph, if I had a title for my message, that's what it would be called, is the bones of Joseph. But first, let's take a look at what the bones of Joseph represent, right? So if you go to Genesis chapter 50, it's the last chapter in Genesis, we have the death of Joseph. So in chapter 50, we're going to start in verse 22. It says, "So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house, and Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation, the children also of Machir," I think that's how you say that, "the son of Manasseh, were counted as Joseph's own. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt." And so here we have the death of Joseph, right? And if you don't know the story of Joseph, Joseph was sold by his brothers as a slave when he was 17 years old. So he was 17, he was sold as a slave to his brothers, and then he spent the next however many years going through quite a bit of trials, right? He made it into Potiphar's house, and then he was way up high in Potiphar's house where he was over everything Potiphar had. But then his wife tried to get him, right? And he took off, but then the wife lied, and then now Joseph's in jail, right? And then Joseph's there for a longer period of time. But then he interprets the king's dream, Pharaoh's dream, and he's made a high rank again until eventually his brothers come back because of the famine. But it took a long time for him to get there. And so from 17 years old all the way up to 110 years old, Joseph lived in Egypt. Now, if you live somewhere that long, you begin to think of that place as home, right? Joseph's home was in Egypt, and I'm pretty sure that him and his family probably had it pretty good while Joseph was alive in Egypt. They were taken care of. They had a good place to stay. And while Joseph was alive, him and his family called Egypt home. But you see, when I begin to think about the bones of Joseph, and I begin to think about the life of Joseph, even after 93 years, Joseph could look ahead and know that where he was at in Egypt right now was not home. He looked ahead and he said, you know what? He told his family, he said, God is going to visit you and he's going to bring you out of this place. I know it's nice, right? And I'm sure his family, his kids and things are like, what are you talking about, Dad? We've got it good, right? It's good here. But Joseph's seen ahead and he said, God's going to visit you and he's going to carry you up. And I want you to promise me right now that when God does visit you and bring you out of here, that you take my bones with you. And so when I begin to think about the bones of Joseph, I begin to think about the promise of God. I begin to think about the things that they represent. I begin to think about the things that really are important to us. The important things. Now, when I begin to think about the important things, when I talk about the important things, right, so the bones of Joseph to me represent the promise of God to deliver the people of Israel out of Egypt. But when I talk about the bones of Joseph today, I want to think about the things that matter right now to us. And that would be when I think about the things that matter, I think about what Jesus said, and he tells us there's two important things, right? The most important things, to love your God with all your might, and to love your neighbor as yourself. He said over these are the two greatest commandments, and on these commandments hang everything else. So love God with everything you've got, and love your neighbor as yourself. And those are the things that matter most. Those are the bones of Joseph that we're going to be talking about today. And so, as the bones represent those, we're pretty good at remembering things that matter when our lives are calm, right? I'm pretty good at remembering to get everything because I have a pocket pat. I'm sure everybody's got their own pocket pat, but I get everything. And in the morning before I walk out the house, I pat and I pat. And I'm like, all right, I got everything. It's all there, right? But if I have a morning where it's chaotic, it's hectic, right? I've woke up late because I've snoozed my alarm too many times, I'm going to leave the house without something. Right? It's without fail, I'll leave the house, and I'll go for my wallet, and I'll be like, man, I cannot believe it, I left my wallet at home. Or I always carry a pocket knife, and I'll get somewhere, and I'll go to get it out of my pocket, and I'll be like, man, I left my pocket knife at home, right? I always forget something because it's chaotic, because it's hectic, right? And it's when our lives are hectic that we can tend to forget the things that really matter. When our lives are busy, when our lives are stressful, we begin to forget the things that really matter and try to focus on solving this problem our way. And so, there's one enemy to the things that matter, and that's busyness. And a good example would be Christmas, right? We just all made it through Christmas, and I don't know about you guys, but Christmas always feels so busy to me, right? It feels so busy. You're up on Christmas morning, and then you're here, and then you're there, and then you're running all over the place, and before you know it, Christmas is over. I don't remember anything about it. It's all been a blur. And it's hard to slow down in these busy times and remember what Christmas is really about. And it's the same thing about the things that are important in our busy lives. We get so busy sometimes that we can zoom right past the things that really matter without even realizing we've missed it. And so when I begin to think about busyness, right, if you look at Israel's exodus from Egypt, the next place we're going to be in is Exodus chapter 12. I'm going to read from there in just a minute. But if you think about Israel's exodus from Egypt, right, that was chaotic. You want to talk about a mess. That would have been a mess. I can barely get us ready in the morning. It's like I'm up, I'm trying to get me ready, you're trying to get the kids ready, and we're trying to get out the door, and that can seem like a challenge. But getting all of Israel out of Egypt, that would be chaotic. I don't know how Moses did it. He was a very patient man because I'm sure there's some people he had to scooch along. He's like, hey, come on, we're out of here right now. I need you to get up. I need you to get going. I don't care if you got shoes on or not. That's what I want to tell my kids sometimes. You know what? You missed your chance to put shoes on. Get out the door. We're going barefoot. It's whatever. And And so I'm sure there was some stressful times like that where Moses said, hey man, I told us, let's go, we got to get out of here. And so if we read in chapter 12, starting in verse 33, we're going to read about the exodus out of Egypt. And it says, the Egyptians were urgent with the people to send them out of the land in haste, for they said, we shall all be dead. So the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading bowls bound up in their cloaks on their shoulders. The people of Israel had also done as Moses told them, for they had asked the Egyptians for silver and gold jewelry and for clothing, and the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have what they had asked. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. And the people of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. A mixed multitude also went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds, and they baked unleavened breads of cakes of dough that they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. So the way it talks about it here is when they left Egypt, right? It says that they sent the people of Israel out in haste, right? They came to them and they said, hey, you've got to get out right now, because if you don't, I think we're all going to be dead. So the Egyptians literally thrust the Israelites out of Egypt. They came to them and they said, you're leaving right now. It said they bound everything up in their cloaks because there was no time to get ready, and they all left. And it said there was about 600,000 men, not including women and children. So if each man had one wife and one child, you're looking at almost 2 million people that now have to get out of this land, and they're all following Moses, right? Moses is trying to get everything together. Moses is trying to get all these people together. And he's saying, listen, we've got to go right now. It's time to get out. 2 million people. Could you imagine being in charge of getting 2 million people on the move? To get them to go from one place to another? That would be insane. Like I said, I can't do it with 4 kids. You can't get them from one place to the other. It's always a struggle. So I couldn't imagine having to do this with 2 million people. But then in chapter 13, so if you go over to chapter 13, the next chapter over in verse 17, it says, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea, and the people of Israel went up out of the land of Egypt equipped for battle. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones with you from here. And so as I read that passage, as I was studying for this and I read that, I thought, man, I could not imagine trying to get 2 million people out of Egypt. You're getting all this stuff together, and then to remember, oh yeah, Joseph's bones. I got to go get those real quick. You know what I mean? Because if you think about it, Joseph lived way before Moses came along. So he'd only heard stories of Joseph. He'd only heard stories of Joseph's bones. But he remembered them because to Moses and the people of Israel, those bones were the things that mattered. They had promised Joseph to take those bones out of Egypt, so those bones represented the things that really mattered. And even amidst the chaos and the craziness that was going on, Moses remembered the bones of Joseph. Now, like I said, when we're in the chaotic times, it's kind of hard to remember the things that really do matter. But if I were to rank, and sometimes when I think of busyness, right, and at least for myself, so if this isn't you, that's great, you're doing really good. But for me, right, sometimes I feel like I make myself more busy than I actually really need to be, right? I'll put stuff on me that really doesn't need to be on me. I have a really bad habit, me and my wife both, and it's weird because I feel like a lot of times we're not synced up in this aspect. But we both really like a really clean house. But we both like the house to be cleaned at different times. And so I'm always like, why are you cleaning? And she's like, because the house needs cleaned. And then when it's my turn later, and she's like, why are you cleaning? I'm like, because look at everything, right? I got to clean it. And so I can make myself incredibly busy to where I sit down at the end of the day and I go, man, I don't really want to read and pray right now. I've been so busy all day long. I just want some time to myself. I just want to watch this TV show. I've been so busy. And a lot of times it's because I've made myself busy. I've made myself fall into this chaos and fall into these things where I'm like, I completely forget about these bones laying over here. If I was Moses, there's no way I would have remembered those bones. No way. I forget stuff all the time. I know for a fact I would have forgot the bones because it would have been crazy. But Moses was remembering the things that really mattered. And I'm telling us that we, even amidst all of our craziness and our chaos, to always keep in mind the things that are important. If I were to rank what was most important to you based on what you spent the most time doing, I want you to think about what your top 3 things would be. And it's a thing that I want you to think in your head because a lot of us know the answer. I know how I should respond to that question, right? I know what my top 3 things should be. But what they really are, a lot of times varies from what they should be. And I begin to think about that. If I could rank each activity I do and how often I do it a week, how much time I spend doing it, what are the 3 most important things in my life? And it's a healthy experience. I'll tell you to write it down, right? Write down how much time you spend doing everything. Okay, I spend an hour watching TV. I spend an hour doing this. And then you can really total it. And it's a very humbling experience to really see where your time is going. When we did our financial class with Ken and Deb, they told us to write down everything you spend in a book. Every time you spend something, you write it down. And to write it all down and then to go back and look at where I've actually spent my money is a very humbling experience. You're like, my goodness, I went to the gas station how many times? You know what I mean? You're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was spending all my money over here. And so if you begin to write down where you're spending your time at, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, man, I did not realize I was spending 8 hours a week on my phone. I don't know if that's lowballing. That might be lowballing. I don't know. Or you're like, man, I didn't realize that I spent 6 hours watching the TV this week. I didn't realize I spent 7 hours just simply cleaning my house. And again, I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with cleaning your house because obviously there's not. I do enjoy a clean house, but sometimes I think I can take it a little OCD where I'm like, no, you didn't do that right. I'm going to go re-clean it again, or something like that. But if we were to actually see where we spent our time, I think we would be shocked. And the problem is the world and the church, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, tend to define people in terms of what they produce, right? How busy are you? What are you providing? What are you bringing to the table? That's how I'm going to judge what you're worth. And the world tends to do that the same as the church, right? How many church functions have you volunteered for this year? Huh? Because I know that, you know what I mean? And it's like those things that if you're not volunteering or if you're not doing this or if you're not doing that, we begin to put self-worth on the people who aren't producing. And the world's the same way. The world says if you don't produce, then you don't deserve these things, or you're not a good person, or they classify you as lazy, or any of those things. And it's because that we tend to put a label based on what people can produce. And that's not the way that it should be. And if you hear nothing else this morning, I want us to pay attention to these next few lines because these are something that me personally, I've been working on this next thing that I'm about to talk about. And it's something that I would really enjoy getting down because I think it could be a life changer. So in this new year, as we approach this new year, me personally, I want to work on what is called holy leisure, right? And when I say the word holy leisure, what it is it's a sense of balance in your life, right? It's this ability to be at peace amongst the activities. It's not saying that you're not going to be busy. But holy leisure is a sense of slowing down amidst the activities to actually enjoy what is going on around you and enjoy God. It's that praying without ceasing that we talk about, right? When you talk about praying without ceasing, it doesn't mean to physically be on your hands and knees 24 hours a day and keep praying, but it's that keeping it in the forefront of your mind, keeping those bones in the front of your mind, that even amidst the activities and the chaos, that I can slow down and breathe and really remember what's important. It's not getting overwhelmed by the things around you. And like I said, we are almost through the busy season, Christmas and New Year. But as I begin to think about what next year is going to hold, none of us know, right? None of us know exactly what next year is going to hold, but there's going to be times where we're going to be busy. There's going to be times where it's going to be hectic, and there's going to be times where it's going to feel chaotic. And I'm telling us now that we will get much more out of life, and we will develop this closer relationship with God if we can learn to have holy leisure, to slow down, and to remember the things that are important, to make time for the things that are important. Because if you're not careful, your whole life will pass you by, and you will have missed it. You know, I'm by no means old at all, but I do look back a lot of times because I have a daughter who will be turning 9 this next year, and, you know, 9's not old either, but to me, I'm like, man, I feel like she was just a baby. Just yesterday, she was a baby. My son, you know, my boys, and I do have one that's still a baby, so I can look back at that and be like, oh, he's still a baby. I'm doing all right. But I try to look back, and I think, man, how did I spend my time with my kids? Because I'm telling you, there's going to come a point where these kids they're going to be gone. And how will I have spent my time while they were in my life? Right? And we can all look back on our lives and we can look at things and think, man, that really got away from me. That really passed me by without even realizing it, and before I knew it, it was gone. Before I knew it, my time with that was up. And can I tell you, when you forget it, there's no going back for it. I can't go back in time and spend more time with my kids when they were babies. I can't go back in time and spend more time with my family. I can't go back in time and spend more time in reading and prayer and getting closer to God. I can't do it. Once I have passed those, it's gone. If Moses had have forgot those bones in Egypt, there would have been no going back for them. He wouldn't have been able to turn around and make a detour back into Egypt to get the bones. He would have simply just missed that opportunity. And a lot of times we can get so busy that before we realize it, we've missed it. We've forgotten them, and they've been left behind. And these bones can seem unimportant in the midst of our lives, but when we get to the end of our life, we realize that they're the most important things. And again, when I talk about the bones, I talk about loving God and loving other people, being a servant to others. Because Jesus said, besides those two things, there's no other greater commandment. And when I get to my life and I look back on my life, it's not going to matter what all I did for work, right? It's not going to matter how many hours I spent at work. At the end of my life, it's not going to matter how much money I have made. It's not going to matter how many functions that I volunteered for. It's not going to matter how much stuff that I ended up getting in my house. What's going to matter is, did I love God? And was I a servant to other people? Because those are the things that really matter. Excuse me. Excuse me. And just like Joseph said, and I'll say it to us as well because I think it still applies, God is going to visit us one day. One day God is going to visit you in this place, on this earth, and he's going to take you to the land that was promised. But when you get there, will you have the bones with you? When we leave this place and we travel to where we're going, will we have the bones with us? Or will we have forgot them in the midst of the chaos? Worship team, if you want to go ahead and come up. I'm almost done, and we've got one more song. But I want to encourage you as we head into 2026. We don't know what God has planned for this year. You know, it could be anything. We don't know what God's going to do in this year. But it's important that amidst whatever happens, all the chaos and the craziness, to grab a hold of those bones and to hang on to them, to keep them in the front of your mind so that way they're not forgotten about. It's so easy to do, to forget about the things that matter, but I'm telling us now that I don't want you to get to the end of your life and to think, man, I've missed it. Because at that point, there's nothing you can do. I can look back on 2025 and realize that maybe there's some things I should have done this year that I didn't get done. I don't want to go into 2026 and get to the end of the year and think, man, I just missed that whole year. I don't want to get to the end of my life and think, man, I really just missed everything that was important. I want to live it right now. And the way to do that is to really slow down in our daily lives and remember what's important. So as they play an altar call song, you pray at your chairs. I want us to begin to prepare for 2026. I want us to begin to make a special prayer. God, in 2026, help me to put the things that matter first. Help me to remember the things that are important, God, and help us to usher in this new year with your presence. And let's just make a declaration right now. Let's commit right now to 2026. Let me get closer to God this year. So as they play, let's pray for 2026 and what's to come, and that God would have his hand in it.